Mark chapter 1 and verse 1 reads, "The beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God." The New Testament provides four accounts of the life, the death, the burial, and the resurrection of Jesus. And these words form the beginning of what is largely believed to be the earliest of those accounts, the one that the Spirit inspired Mark to record. Mark was himself a young man in the early years of the church there in Jerusalem, but quickly came into proximity of notable figures like Jesus' apostle Paul and his co-worker Barnabas, but especially the apostle Peter, who in one of Peter's later letters he would actually identify as being like a son to him. And it's that relationship between Mark and Peter that scholars believe provided a lot of the content for what Mark's gospel gets across to us. That's to say, when you read Mark's gospel, it's almost like what you would have experienced if you'd got to hear Peter preach. Because that's what these four gospel accounts in the New Testament are like. When Jesus selected those apostles, when he sent them out after his resurrection, their job were to be witnesses of Jesus. All the things that they had seen and heard since Jesus' baptism until his resurrection and ascension into heaven, they were to go and be witnesses of those things to people all around. And when the gospel accounts of Matthew, Luke, John, and Mark were written down for us, it allows us to still be blessed by that witness, even though the men who witnessed it have long since departed from this earth. When we read the words of Mark's gospel, we are given an opportunity to know Jesus. To know Jesus the way that Peter came to know Jesus, the way that through his witnessing, Mark came to know Jesus. We're invited to truly know who Jesus is today. And there's a lot to know, as this very first verse in Mark's gospel account makes clear. He says that this is the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. And in that way, he's indicating for us that in this particular account of Jesus' life, he's going to drop us right into it. Mark's not going to waste any time. And when he says that this is the beginning of the gospel, that's one of those church words that we might throw around a lot without really being clear on what it means. But when Mark's gospel opens this way, appreciate that another way of translating that word gospel is to say the good news. So when Mark's telling us that this is the gospel of Jesus, this is the good news of Jesus, he is getting in our minds what to expect with what we hear. We are about to receive a bold, victorious proclamation of what God has accomplished in this world because of Jesus Christ. And when he identifies him first as Jesus for us, appreciate that that was a very common name for people in his time. In Hebrew, it was Yeshua, which we translate Joshua, and it literally means God saves. And while we hear the name Jesus and think of one and only one person, Jesus was a common name in those days. Yet, Jesus was anything but common, as that second descriptor, which isn't his last name, but his title attests to. When Mark says that this is the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's a transliterated word. There was a Hebrew word that was translated to Greek that we translate into English, and that's where we get Christ from. But if you go all the way back to its roots, it originally means the anointed one. Jesus was anything but common because God had anointed him for a special role and purpose. He had anointed him to be Lord. He had anointed him to be king over all. So when we're told that this is the gospel of Jesus Christ, it's not as though Jesus was his first name and Christ was his last name. We're being told that this is the good news of King Jesus, the one that God himself has appointed to reign over all. And Mark also tells us in this first sentence why that is. This is the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. And there is the kicker. That's what makes reading this different than reading a biography of any other historical figure, because this, in the first sentence, is a startling, earth-shattering claim that this man, Jesus, that billions around the world recognize as Lord and King, is in fact God's Son. And from the get-go, we're confronted with the reality that if you're going to read and learn about and truly know Jesus, it will force you to make a choice. Because from the beginning, it is laid out that Jesus is God's Son. And if we truly know him, if we accept what these scriptures present about him as being true, then it's going to force us to choose. Who are we loyal to? How are we going to live? So accept this as your invitation. As we go through a passage at a time in Mark's gospel, you now have an opportunity to come to know Jesus better. If you accept that invitation, you will never be the same.